I did invite you to be broad in your response, and you've taken us to the whole global outlook and the global picture, so I'm grateful to you to that. We will come back to Gaza because in the midst of everything else that's happening, this is a particularly striking occurrence in global affairs. One of the things that strikes me about it is it would have been unthinkable 3 years ago when the Abraham Accords were in full flight and there appeared to be a reshaping of relations in the Middle East, that the world would have tolerated what the Netanyahu government has unleashed in Gaza, and yet the world has tolerated it. I think both of you have put the case very well that the strains are there, that global sympathy for the Israeli case is being eroded day by day, and yet the Abraham Accords still stand, so that's still a possibility. Arms are still sold to the Netanyahu government. People still question whether this should be called a genocide or whether we have a famine. So there's still tremendous amount of resilience in the global tolerance of Israel's policies. What I want to ask is, at what point does that break? And if it does break, how does it break? So will the world just allow Israel, one way or another, despite all of the words, to continue with whatever policy it chooses?
Well, if I'm allowed, Ehud, to make a comment on that. First of all, the Abraham Accords were the only way to move forward. For the ones who do not know, they were called Abraham Accords because Abraham was the father of all religions in the region: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So this cultural and historical element was found in order to build upon that the future of the world. And it was going quite well. But Hamas destroyed it for me. Hamas, from the moment they saw that we were approaching to a final solution of the Palestinian issue, they blew everything up. So they are responsible for that. But now
does it matter?
No, of course. Coming back to your question, the Abraham agreements have to be revived. And this is the responsibility of all stakeholders in the region, including the global stakeholders, because this is the base upon which they can build a better future. So I fully agree with you. This has to come back. Although it is wounded now, it's difficult to heal what happened there, but it needs effort, and my dear friend, it needs leadership, as I explained before.
Ehud.
I'd like to say, just as an opening statement, I'm personally a very optimistic person. And I'm sure, based on my life experience and what I've seen through the trial and tribulations of my country and the way that we had to cope with the challenges and the threats and the difficulties that Israel was part of, that things sometimes may change more rapidly and more massively than what is anticipated at a certain particular moment. And I just want to take you for a second away from the day-to-day miseries today and just remind you of something that happened 50 years ago, almost. In 1977, there was a dramatic change in Israeli politics. First time that the right wing in Israel won elections, which was in a direct opposition to everything that characterized the nature of Israeli politics for generations, even before the actual creation of the State of Israel. And Menachem Begin was made the Prime Minister of the State of Israel in an absolutely democratic election process. He won the elections dramatically. On the night of the Likud win in 1977, Washington was petrified. And Europe was devastated. And in the British television networks and then the press, everyone said, a terrorist has taken over the State of Israel. Begin, the terrorist, the head of the terrorist gang before the creation of Israel. And Jimmy Carter, and that I found out later when I was quite close to Menachem Begin, and he shared it with me. President Carter called Menachem Begin when the first announcements of the exit polls devastated the whole world because no one expected the Likud to win the elections. And he congratulated Begin, but right then and there, before there were even any formal announcements about the outcome of the elections, he said to Begin, please, please, don't make an announcement tonight that you are annexing all of the territories of the West Bank and the Sinai. Had someone told Jimmy Carter, at that time President of America, or anyone in Great Britain or in Europe, that within a year time, that same Menachem Begin, the former terrorist that everyone was so scared of, will sign an agreement with President Sadat to make peace between Israel and Egypt on the basis of complete 100% withdrawal of Israel from all the territories, people would have said that he's crazy. It's insane, it's impossible, inconceivable. How can it happen? It did happen. So sometimes things can change more dramatically than anticipated. Now, what does it depend on? And that brings me perhaps closer to your question. Of course, it depends on the ability of leaders and the ability, what I say, is the ultimate test of great leadership. The ability of leaders at the right time, at the right moment, to do the opposite of everything that they have been preaching for and fighting for and defending for all their lives. Begin is one example. In a certain way, Ariel Sharon, the prime minister that I was privileged to be the vice premier of, in 2003, we started to do the disengagement process, pulling out and dismantling all of the Israeli settlements in Gaza, the same settlements that 10 years earlier Ariel Sharon himself built. Had someone said at the beginning that the day will come, a year before it actually did take place, that Sharon will be the one that will dismantle all the settlements that he built, again, the popular reaction would have been, don't be crazy. It's inconceivable, impossible. So, number one, I am an optimist. I am an optimist, but of course, what it depends on the kind of leaderships that we may have that can set the tone. And there, we've got a big problem, both in Israel and on the Palestinian side. Okay. Now, I just want to add to this one thing. There is a solution. There is a solution. There is a solution for the war in Gaza now. It has to stop today with the return of all the hostages, with the introduction of an interim security force made of Palestinians and soldiers of moderate Arab countries like Jordan, Egypt, the Emirates, Saudis, and so on and so forth, that will take over the military control in Gaza instead of Israel pulling out completely, bringing all the hostages back, releasing Palestinian prisoners. There is a very clear pattern to solve it. It can be done, and I believe that it can be done also with a cooperation with what has been left of Hamas, which is very little, let's face it. We are 24 months almost after the 7th of October, not what we had then, we have now. So this is one thing, and of course, there can be also the beginning of a process of negotiations between us and the Palestinians on a two-state solution, something that I've been advocating since I presented it as a comprehensive solution to Dr. Mahmoud Abbas in 2008 when I was Prime Minister. Now, how all this is related to the Abraham Accords, because you started with the Abraham Accords, and I have this habit, I know, I regret and I apologize, that I normally don't answer the question that I was asked. What I think is more important, so you bear with me. But it comes back to the Abraham Accords. How? The Abraham Accords is a landmark, but this is just part of the way towards a dramatic change which can make a dramatic turnaround in the history of the Middle East. The strategic change is the process of normalization that will include the Saudis, the State of Israel, Palestine as an independent state as part of the comprehensive solution between us and the Palestinians, Jordan, Egypt, Bahrain, subsequently Indonesia, North African countries, in other ways. We have this route which is looming in front of our eyes now that can be achieved. It has to start with the end of the war in Gaza. Then it has to move with the starting of a dialogue between the leadership of Israel and the Palestinians towards a two-state solution. Subsequently, everything will just move upward rapidly. The Abraham Accords are therefore now in a kind of a critical point. It can be the basis for larger and broader and more significant cooperation between the historical rivals that have come to terms with the realities and the demands of a change, or it may be, unfortunately, it may suffer a certain crisis. We heard in the last few days the leaders of the, and I'm familiar with, I know them all, they are absolutely impressive, serious, and very responsible leaders. I have a lot of respect for them. And they warn America that if the government of Israel will decide on an annexation of the West Bank, it will be a red line that will cross all the understanding that we have now. So we are in a critical point. There are two different routes, one which leads to chaos and one which leads quite clearly into a dramatic change. It's incumbent upon the leaders. I don't trust them. There is only one, as I said before, who can make a difference. If he understands, if he is in the right mood, if he is not in the golf court, and if he understands what he wants to achieve. I don't know.
Okay. I suspect that that final part of your answer is an answer that could be given to many, many questions that are floating around us in the world.
I told you, I warned you.
Yeah. We've got 5 minutes. I've got two questions, both of which will probably take some answering. So I'm going to ask you to try and be sort of reasonably concentrated in your answers. The first, going back to this idea of leadership, and I'm going to stick with Israel for a second. We think of political leaders, the big challenge they face is from the opposition. Quite frequently in democracies, political leaders become hostages of their own side. And this is certainly the case with Benjamin Netanyahu. So my question is, to what extent, and this can be a percentage answer, to what extent is he driven by a strategic vision? And to what extent is he driven by a survival instinct? And given your answer to that, what does that tell us about how things may develop between now and elections in 2027?
I'll start with the positive
Or 2026, isn't it?
It's all right, Dimitris.
Keep it brief, because we don't have much time.
Listen, Dimitris is he's an old friend, as you say. We started back 30 years ago when he was in Athens and I was in Jerusalem. The two most significant capitals in the world, in my mind, with all due respect to many others. But in terms of his history, in terms of legacy, in terms of basic principles which are still guiding the majority of the Western world, which we are so proud to be part of. And we were the privilege to be at that same time mayors of these great cities. The elections in Israel, hopefully, if they will take place in the right time or before, and given the division of opinions as we can now find out in the process of the polling taking place every day, seems to change in favor of opposition to the Israeli government. Will it be strong enough, powerful enough, bold enough, imaginative and creative enough to do what I think it should do? I'm not certain. But it will normalize the Israeli process. So it will take a step back from where we are now into something that can start a process that may have to take more time, and then another different government that will have to come after the first government that will replace Netanyahu. So there we will have to see. What we have now, I can say this. Netanyahu is definitely a captive of this messianic, fundamentalist, aggressive, violent group of supporters. The names are very familiar now. They are world renowned or notorious. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and they represent quite a large group of support within the Israeli public opinion, which is not a majority, which is not even close to a majority, but which dictates the mood, the attitudes, the public discourse, and the expectations for a radical turn into the annexation and the expulsion of Palestinians, both from Gaza and from the West Bank. Now, is Bibi just a captive, or is he a willing partner? And if he is a willing partner, is it because this is what he believes in, or this is what he thinks is the only way for him to protect his political survivability? I think that the problem and the tragedy is that the political survivability of Netanyahu seems to coincide with these messianic concepts, and therefore it becomes almost irrelevant what lies behind it. The fact is that he is cooperating with them willingly and in such an aggressive manner is something that is a source of great aggravation for the majority of Israelis.
Okay.
Your question is very clear, and it will be very short because we're running out of time. What's the difference between a strategist and a political manager? Nowadays, our democracies, not only in our neighborhood but also in Europe, are crossing difficult moments because of the rise of populism, which is coming together hand in hand with nationalism. The world has suffered a lot in the past, and we have to draw lessons from the past. Because what has been said that history repeats itself is not correct. Men repeat it very simply because they don't read it. Just remember where we were at the end of the last century and the beginning of this one. After 1921, the crash in Wall Street, we had United States suffering. And the very first part of the world impacted by that was Latin American. And that's where the very first authoritarian regimes emerged. They exported this style of governance in Europe, and we had all these dictators who led the continent to the abyss. Right now, we have this phenomenon in a different scale, under different circumstances, within Europe. Populism is on the rise. And populism is the answer indirectly to what you asked before, is turning to the people, saying nice things, whispering in the ears of the citizens nice things that they will never lead the country in a long run to a better future. And that's where we stand now. So the global leadership and the national leadership should focus on that in order to prevent the unthinkable from happening. And this is explained somehow the rhetorics and the behavior of some leaders within their country. They try to be pleasant, and at the same time, they lead their countries to problems.
Okay, thank you very much. That was absolutely fascinating. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we could go on with this, I'm sure, all day, and I'm sure there are many things both of you could have told us.
That's why I anticipated in the beginning talking about Cyprus, because they're going to have time to talk about it.
Excellent, excellent. Okay,
thank you.
Please join me in thanking our speakers. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you.